Okay, everyone, well, welcome. Welcome to Peace Week, organized by the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School for Peace and Conflict Resolution at the George Mason University. Each semester, the Carter School Peace Week brings together faculty, students, and alumni, as well as friends and partners from across the peace and conflict resolution community for a week-long conversation around how to effectively address urgent issues of peace and justice. The theme for this fall's Peace Week is Horizons of Innovation and Entrepreneurship for Peace. The title of today's session, this session, is How Innovations in the Food Sector Are Used to Create More Inclusive and Sustainable Food Systems. My name is Hassana Thomas, and I'm the host for today's session, which is a collaboration between the Carter School and my project, East Meets West. I'm also the founder and president of Entertainment Television Production, a nonprofit organization based here in Washington, D.C. area. East Meets West, still in development, is a groundbreaking project celebrating the convergence of Eastern and Western cultures through the universal language of food. By showcasing diverse culinary traditions, East Meets West highlights the richness of cultural exchange and mutual appreciation. Through engaging storytelling and immersive culinary experiences, we hope to bridge cultural divides and spark critical conversations around food, as well as food activism, fostering a deeper appreciation of our shared humanity. So if you're not already plugged into the Carter School's calendar of events, be sure to get plugged in to learn more about what they're doing and also for future updates about East Meets West. And you can also learn more about my project by clicking on Entertainment Television's link on the webinar session page where you went to register. So in an era marked by climate change and resource scarcity, ensuring that food producers, the backbone of global food security, can thrive is essential for both environmental sustainability and social cohesion. The resilience of food supply chains has direct social and economic impacts, particularly in conflict-affected and post-conflict regions where empowering producer communities can serve as a vital tool for peace building and long-term recovery. During our session today, we will explore the most pressing challenges facing our food producers, how innovations can be tailored to meet their unique needs, and how equitable access to technology and collaboration can foster durable solutions. So the format of this webinar is quite unique. We have assembled a dynamic panel of industry experts who will serve as our main panelists, and we'll get the conversation going. We've invited several food producers, 3 of them, and they'll be our storytellers from across the globe whom will individually spotlight and bring on to talk about how innovation and entrepreneurship are driving resilience in their communities. Each storyteller will have up to 7 minutes. Then we'll come back to our main panelists for a bit of follow-up discussion. Then we'll bring on the second storyteller and they'll have up to 7 minutes. And we'll just kind of go back and forth like that until we've spotlighted all 3 of them. Then we'll bring on everyone to kind of hash it out a bit for another like maybe 15 more minutes. And then we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. And then we'll be done with the webinar. So I will briefly introduce our 3 main panelists now. However, their full bios with links are posted on our session webpage. So I'd first like to introduce Charity Hanif. Charity, she's an independent agribusiness and international development consultant expert with nearly 25 years of experience in managing and evaluating global projects. Next, we have Alexandra. That's Charity. Okay, next we have Alexandra Spieldoch. She's the Director of Women's Entrepreneurship and Global Business Development at IDE Global, which stands for International Development Enterprises. And they have teams all over the world, but I believe they're HQ'd in Denver, Colorado, I think. Okay, yeah. And our final main panelist is Juan Pablo Echeverria, who is the Outreach and Education Manager at the ARCADIA Center for Sustainable Food and Agriculture, located right here in our own backyard in Alexandria, Virginia. So before we get the conversation started and hear from our main panelists and our storytellers, I just want to take a few minutes here at the top to establish some context about agriculture's impact on our planet and agriculture as a key stakeholder in climate change before we distill it down to the food producers who I mentioned are the backbone of our food system. I'm not an expert in the fields of agriculture, environmentalism, or climate change. And actually in preparing for this webinar, I found it kind of challenging to navigate the topic of the future of food security in agriculture. It's such it's such an enormous and intricate, has such an enormous and intricate set of issues. However, I promise that this discussion is not going to be about spewing negative statistic after statistic or about the huge mess we humans have made of our planet. But I truly think it's important to kind of briefly paint a large picture of the issues before we focus on that part we're going to talk about today. So of all the articles I read and websites I visited to prepare for this discussion, it was Dr. Jonathan Foley, who heads up Project Drawdown. It was his article in Nat Geo entitled Feeding 9 Billion People, which then led me to his video presentation on YouTube entitled Food Matters, Why Climate Change May Hinge on What We Eat and How We Grow It. Those two sources laid it all out crystal clear for me. And basically everything I'm about to say now came from his video presentation, which the links to both the Nat Geo article and the presentation are posted on our webinar session page. It was so good. It was very, very interesting. And I encourage you all to, watch it when you get a chance. So what I gleaned from his presentation is that the production of food is the most important thing that humans do on the planet. And I know that really sounds just like such a simple and obvious statement, but it's incredible how much of our planet is actually devoted to growing food. Currently, agriculture uses between 30 and 40% of all the land on Earth. And historically, agriculture has been about just clearing enormous swaths of land, the purpose being to grow plants and crops for consumption or animal feed or biofuels. But just how much of that land is used to actually grow food for human consumption? Well, he said 16 million square kilometers, roughly the size of South America, is dedicated to growing crops. But then 34 million square kilometers, more than double that, is dedicated to grazing animals. And that's, he says, I like the way he says it, is about the size of an Africa's worth of land. And put together, the total of these two land masses make up about 37% of the Earth's land. Now contrast that with the amount of land where people live. The Earth's cities and suburb areas make up less than 1% of the Earth's land. But farms take up over 60 times more land than that of all the world's cities and suburbs combined. So this makes food, and the production of food, the world's largest ecosystem. So if 37% of the Earth's land is used for agriculture, I was really amazed to learn, how much of that is devoted to a single subcategory of food, which is animal agriculture. So it turns out that of all that amount of land, like the size of an Africa's worth of land, the size of South America's worth of land, that 3/4 or 75% of that land mass is totally devoted to animals, either for grazing them or to grow crops to feed them. So to break it down, the biggest thing that humans do on the planet is food, and the biggest thing within that is raise animals or the food that they eat. And that's a problem, because clearing that much of land for agriculture means that entire natural habitats like rainforests or savannas, they were destroyed. 1/3 of the world's rainforests have already been cleared primarily for agriculture, whether it's to raise cattle for beef, animal feed, or biofuels. So agriculture uses more land than anything else than humans have done. It's also the biggest user of water to irrigate farmland. So for centuries, humans have diverted natural water systems like the Colorado River or Lake Chad in Africa, or even in the former Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, the Aral Sea, which was one of the largest inland seas in the world. I think now it just looks like a desert from satellite pictures. Like all of these natural water systems are collapsing because humans have taken water out of nature to irrigate crops, lands, and they don't return the water back to nature. And over time, these practices have had devastating effects. So water use around the globe for agriculture is causing the collapse of critical freshwater resources and ecosystems all over the planet. Agriculture uses more land and more water than anything else we do on this planet. It's also, unfortunately, one of the biggest sources of pollution on the planet, especially for water pollution. And a lot of that comes from chemicals, fertilizers, which over decades, its use has increased to grow bigger yields of crops. And of course, a lot of it runs off into water supplies and heads out into the rivers, lakes, and eventually into the ocean. So I like the way Dr. Foley, he says basically it's essentially just pouring Miracle Grow directly into our freshwater sources. And that which causes a lot of algae growth. And guess what? It collapses aquatic ecosystems across many of the world's lakes, rivers, and even coastal oceans. But unfortunately, that's not all. Agriculture contributes to climate change. Normally when I think about pollution and climate change, I think about my cars, vehicles, the pollution from vehicles, factories, drilling for oil, things like that. But it turns out that agriculture is a major contributor to the rising levels of greenhouse gases causing climate change. Um, Carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, these are the three main greenhouse gases causing climate change. And there's clear and direct correlation between food production and the rise in these three gases. So we definitely need to have a new approach to food production and food consumption, the way we consume food. So how do we fix this? How do we make sure we are truly producing available food that is distributed and accessible fairly and equitably around the world? That's also resilient to economic and environmental shocks. The problem is that we have a food system that can't feed everyone, nor can keep up with the future demand of food, and a food system that causes more environmental harm than about anything else we do on the planet. All right, so that's it. That's enough of the gloom and doom. That's kind of the big picture I wanted to paint, and to kind of give some background context for this discussion. There's like so many more nuances to these issues that I haven't even mentioned, but the good news is that there are a lot of smart and passionate people at the forefront of these issues, like Dr. Jonathan Foley and his team at Project Drawdown, and also just like all my guests on the panel today, who are tirelessly working to bring solutions to these issues and make our world a better place. So that's enough of me talking. Let's hear from our main panelists, what they have to say. So I'm going to throw the first question to Charity. The Charity, who is very instrumental in helping me scale down the enormity of this broad topic to focus on our food producers and the role of the small farmers. So Charity, you just heard me say, as it stands now, the world's agriculture system can't keep up with population growth. How are we going to feed 9 billion people? And like, why? Well, maybe you don't, I don't expect you to answer like how we're going to feed 9 billion, but like, why are small farmers the key, and how can they be supported to adopt sustainable practices and increase yields?
Thank you. I mean, it is a big topic. I think first I would want to say it's all farmers. It's big, small, it's farmers everywhere. And diverse supply sheds are the most resilient. And so there's a lot of external voices that are trying to dictate how production happens. And I think that it needs to be producer led, and it needs to serve, like, as we think about the sustainability and the resilience of our food system. I mean, I think that understanding how we support the producers to be more efficient, to use the resources better, to solve the problems that keep them up at night. We need to listen in a different way. And we do need diverse supply sheds. It can't just be one kind of farmer or one farmer that carries the load, whether that's large or small. And we need incredibly diverse supply sheds that are ecosystems in and of themselves to support them economically, environmentally, socially, because that's where we have potential for a collapse of our food system. I think that the farmers are there to feed us, and so we need to figure out what keeps them up at night and how to build that diverse supply shed.
Okay, thank you. Alexandra, what role does IDE play in fostering innovation and entrepreneurship among producers and small businesses? And what challenges does your organization help solve?
Thank you. Well, IDE is an organization. It's in its 42nd year. It has programs in 11 countries, and it works across multiple sectors, including food and agriculture, wash, nutrition. Essentially, IDE has been passionate and engaged around how to reach last mile entrepreneurs and support resilient macro ecosystems that essentially open doors for them and also, result in thriving communities. I think that there are a lot of different levers in terms of how to reach last mile entrepreneurs. as Charity mentioned, really listening to them and understanding where they see the need and the opportunity within their communities, where they have their own dreams, their own vision about what business potential could look like, and then figuring out what kinds of programs can be developed to support them. One of the key challenges that rural entrepreneurs face, producers face, is lack of access to basic financing and access to productive resources that would help them to develop their business. So, in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa, for example, that's lack of access to mechanization and to small-scale equipment that would move them from very traditional manual methods to more efficiency in how they're producing and processing their crops. So these kinds of things are always at the forefront of IDE. And there is no one magic bullet. So it's also about thinking about innovation as an ongoing iterative process, and also decentralized solutions. Tends to be an overemphasis on, in my view, of these kind of large multi-million-dollar initiatives that have a place and have their relevance. But I think we can advance in many ways to meet our sustainable development goals and to support producers with more decentralized interventions and support systems for them.
Thank you. Okay, and Juan, at the opening, I mentioned that sustainable food systems can be a crucial element in promoting stability and economic resilience, especially in vulnerable communities. Can you talk about what innovative food distribution systems Arcadia Center uses to make nutritious food more available in undisturbed urban areas, and also maybe how private companies, including supermarkets and food delivery sources, can be encouraged or incentivized to offer more affordable, healthy options in urban communities?
Yeah. So Arcadia, I think it'll be our 12th year. We established mobile markets, and these are kind of retrofit. It started as a retrofitted school bus, and now we've moved on to like a nice truck with a cooling system. But we go out to neighborhoods, specifically in Wards 7 and 8 in DC, that are considered food deserts. We set up shop. We source food from our farm, which is mostly fruits and vegetables, and then we source from local farms within 100 miles of DC, meat, dairy, eggs. So it's a one-stop shop for people. And what's interesting is that we've, every year we see an increase in our sales. We see that our whole goal eventually is to kind of prove to large scale markets that there is a demand for food in these communities, and hopefully phase ourselves out and have some of these shops come in here. These communities are, have poor transportation. You literally look at a map of these two wards in DC and there are no supermarkets. There's 7-Elevens and liquor stores. So you can buy, processed food that'll keep you fed and going on a daily basis, but not necessarily nutrition. Just to share a kind of anecdote, our director, when she first showed up to the market, saw a lot of people with amputated legs. And she was like, "Whoa, there's a lot of veterans working in these, living in these neighborhoods." She had been a reporter for during Afghanistan and Iraq, and so she made that connection of like, oh, these are war veterans. And they were like, no, these are actually people with type 2 diabetes who have lost limbs. And so that really kind of like informed the need that these communities have for healthy food. Our mobile markets obviously accept SNAP and WIC and other DC food programs, which kind of solves one issue, which is we are able to bring food to people and make it affordable to them. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily pay for the full price of the food that we're giving. And so you still need, government to provide and subsidize some of that food, which obviously supermarkets are able to do. And a big component of these markets has also been in the area of educating people, trying to work with the schools and the local community on just like kind of changing a little bit of people's shopping practices. I recently checked out the statistic, but like 23% of SNAP goes to buying junk food, which is a pretty high percentage of the food. And so if we can over time, hopefully not through like having to legislate it, but just like encourage people to spend less on that type of food and grow and buy a little bit more food, we can make these markets more successful and hopefully bring healthier outcomes for these communities.
Yeah, great. Thank you all. That kind of warms us up. All right, so we're going to bring on our food producers, who are out there growing that healthy food. So our first storyteller or food producers is Ben Hartman. He's the author of 3 books, including The Lean Micro Farm and The Lean Farm. And Ben was named one of 50 emerging green leaders in the United States. He and his wife, Rachel, own and operate Clay Bottom Farm in Goshen, Indiana, where they make their living growing specialty crops on 1/3 acre of land production. So I want to welcome Ben.
Okay.
All right.
It's nice to be here.
Let me just turn up. Let me turn my about. Okay. So I'll just like throw out the first question, and then Charity, Alexandra, Juan. I mean, you can jump in and just engage with Ben. But maybe just talk about your philosophy, your Get Small Farm philosophy. Your new book, Lean Micro Farm, it emphasizes the Get Small approach. Can you share how this philosophy benefits both farmers and the environment, particularly when it comes to sustainability and resource efficiency?
Yeah, I guess my perspective is that of primarily as a producer. My wife and I grow food on 1/3 acre of land to support our family. And all of our food sells within 1.5 miles of our farm. So some would call that a hyper-local farm system that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And we're basically the behind the scenes farm for 3 restaurants in Goshen, Indiana, which is a small college city of about 40 or 50,000 residents. And I know we didn't want to focus too much on statistics, but one that jumped out at me that I read recently from the University of Colorado is that by the end of this century, we will have half as many farmers as we have today, and farms that remain, but at that time will be twice as large as they are. And so we're on a trajectory the way I see it at the ground level here in northern Indiana, it's rapid landmass consolidation that's happening sort of underneath our noses. It doesn't reach the headlines because it's just it's been such a gradual happening. But I grew up on a 500-acre conventional corn and soybean farm. And at the time, that was considered a big farm. Now you need to be several times larger than that for the economics to work with conventional grain crops. And so what happened on our family farm is, to be honest, there just wasn't an on-ramp for me. There wasn't an opportunity there when I was starting out my career 17 years ago. And so what's happened is that there's a larger scale corporate entity that's taken over that farm, taking over the land. And as you alluded to earlier, most of those crops are going to feed animals. And so I see it on the ground level here. So it's interesting to hear it fed back to me in the form of statistics, but it's a lived reality that's really pushed a whole generation of people off of farms here. And it leads to, I think, an understandable amount of resentment, confusion, and poverty. And suicide rates are, among all professions, farming is right up there when it comes to mental health issues. And so we've been fortunate in that my wife and I took a strong pivot towards local organic production and selling food locally and really listening to local customers. And frankly, to be honest, using the Japanese lean system to cut out waste and focus on becoming more efficient instead of just constant blind expansion has been the key for us in our case. And key to that, and Juan Pablo had alluded to this too, is really listening to the local community. What does the local community need? What do they want? When do they want it? How much? Really dial in, be precise. And the language of lean is precise, identify value. What does the local community really value from the local farmers, and try to align what we're doing with what they say they want and need.
Anybody have any follow-up questions for Ben on that one? Well, all right then.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
had one, Ben. I'm curious. You said you're an author too. Are there any other like farm adjacent forms of income that you guys have that also contribute to the sustainability of your farm?
Mm-hmm. I do have most of our work and income would be from selling the produce from the farm, but I do have some income from the author work and some educational work. We have a couple of workshops every year on our farm, training others who are interested in making this pivot from large scale to micro scale agriculture.
Can I add a comment? I may and request for Ben to comment about. So my experience has largely been in Africa, as I believe Alexandra also alluded to a lot of her experiences in Africa, and we also see this push for, and to a certain extent, a need for certain economies of scale. But but like the solution from a resilience perspective, I mean, Ben, could you talk about a little bit about the universality of efficiency and the fact that how to help farmers where they're at versus this growth only, this need to have more inputs or more investment, which I think in resource poor situations seems to be the first approach, right? They don't have finance, they don't have, they're not using what they need, the soil is poor. So how have you seen the universality of sort of your experience, and how have you taken that to other countries to try to help people with resilience where they're at?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I really like the language that Alexandra introduced, which is new to me, but this idea of decentralized solutions. Because the problems I have on my farm are different than the problems that Tamara is going to have on her farm. And every farm, even in around our small city of Goshen, is going to have a unique set of problems. And to assume that there's one solution that's going to propel all these farms forward is preposterous. You really need to start with a farmer first approach. And so Cherry and I worked together on a USAID funded project in Nigeria, for instance. And what we began with was asking farmers where they saw forms of waste. And in the lean system, there are seven types of waste. In English, we have one word for waste. And but the Japanese have a much more nuanced concept of waste. And so we asked them, when do you see the waste of overproduction, the waste of excess transportation, the waste of excess packaging, and so on? And these farmers are the best source of knowledge for where those sources of wastes exist on their farms. They're really the best people to go to. And so often our approach is skip the farmer and go straight to agronomists or experts. But then we lose sight of the decentralized solution that's really going to propel a farm forward. So the universality aspect is that there are seven types of waste in the lean system, and those types of waste are ubiquitous. All farms all over the world have waste on them that can be reduced, and reducing waste creates an enormous amount of capacity. And we just are not accustomed to thinking that way. We're accustomed to thinking that farms need to get bigger, spend more money, grow more food, buy more land, upsize their tractors and grain bins. That's how they stay in business. But there's a better approach, which is to do less but better, be more focused, and cut out the waste.
This is Alexandra.
Thank
I
you.
really like that comment, and I just want to say the other thing that is such a challenge in the in our sector are these sort of, one size solutions with the inputs like seeds, for example, or scientists that have like created seed varieties without really talking with farmers and then try to market it to farmers and then kind of wonder why there's not the uptake that they're looking for. I think that's a really major challenge in the community, and one that also like ignores the fact that producers are part of the science and a part of the research, applied research and consumer research that is needed in order for markets to actually be able to uptake technology that will be useful and, of course, do no harm.
Mhm.
All right, that little beat. Okay, I have one final question for Ben, and then we're gonna actually transition to Tamara. But Ben, what advice would you give farmers looking to transition into microfarming, the microfarming model, especially in urban or resource limited settings? What are some of the key steps to ensure long-term success?
Sure. It all really, the lean system really can be boiled down to one sentence, which is start with the start with the customer and work backwards from there. And so, in other words, what I would do first thing is go print out a Google Maps of everyone who's purchasing, eating food in your local community. Start with cafeterias, hospital cafeteria lines, schools, restaurants, farmers markets, and talk to those markets, potential markets, and ask them what do they want, when do they want, how much, and then discern from that what you could produce that aligns with what your community says it needs and wants. It's really a very simple process that almost never happens in agriculture. At least the farm I grew up on, we didn't even know who was the end user of our products. It's completely detached from the local community. So the community really should be the driver of the economics of your farm.
Okay. Thank you. And we're gonna bring you back on later on. We'll all kind of hash it out together. So our next storyteller, farmer, entrepreneur, she's a farmer, entrepreneur, and photographer, as Tamara Bogolaski, a small producer and entrepreneur who has not only built a sustainable business, but also supports others in her community in central Chile to thrive in the face of climate and market challenges. She'll share how she's overcoming these barriers and helping others do the same. So I want to welcome Tamara. Tamara, let's see. After 13, let's see. Yeah, okay. After 13, you spent 13 years in New York City. So I would like to know, like, what inspires you to return to Chile and start El Board? And how did your experiences in the U.S. shape your approach to farming and entrepreneurship there in Chile?
Yeah, I was in New York for 13 years, and that's where I really learned about farming. I was never really interested in food. I grew up in Santiago, which is the capital of Chile, and never paid attention to where my food was coming from. But when I moved to New York, it was more like in my face of what I was eating. So I became more conscious of what I was eating, and that's what brought me to farming. And learning about farming in the US made me see what was happening back home in Chile and realize that being a huge agricultural country where a big part of our economy is fruits and vegetables, there wasn't a lot of consciousness on small scale organic food. It's mostly huge operations of monocrops that are exported. So I saw a need in my home country to explore a little bit about agriculture and permaculture and bring back this sense of like starting small and feeding your community, as Ben said, and trying to be as local as possible, but also like showing what real food is. Because it's so often that we end up like eating the food in the supermarkets and we don't realize what the real flavor of a tomato is because we're eating a tomato that was harvested green and brought from thousands of miles or kilometers. And by the time they get to you, they're red, but it's just water. There's no nutrition, there's no flavor. And in my own experience, and also so many other people I've talked to, it's incredible the first time you you try a real tomato that's been grown in healthy soils, that's been harvested in the proper time, and it's a life-changing experience to eat real vegetables.
Amazing. Okay, so there are some words there. I know you and I, when I first asked you to come on, you had this long conversation, and you gave me quite an education. And like just like you said, when you're in New York, I don't even me, I didn't think about the food. I just go to the supermarket and get it. But I just know that I love red delicious apples. But so often I'll get them and they look nice and shiny, but when I bite into them, they're just mushy and mealy, or tomato, they have no taste. But talk about permaculture, because that's something I don't. And maybe some of our audience, they might not know a lot about that. Explain what that is and why you chose that approach.
Yeah, so permaculture, my farm is a permaculture project, and within that project, there is a vegetable farm. But permaculture is a design system that imitates the ways that nature works to create sustainable systems within time. They require a lot of work to establish them, but with time, they just work. They help each other out, and the systems just work because you put the systems in place for each plant or each resource to help the other resource. So it really is just, it's a design system that's based in natural patterns. And it can be applied in very, very small scale, like in a small apartment in the middle of a city, into huge scales of many, many acres. And I started learning about farming through permaculture, and permaculture just kind of like opened my eyes into a whole new world. And it made so much sense to me, in the sense that like working with nature and helping a space be more productive, more self-sufficient, and use the resources that nature is giving you to do less. Really, it's many permaculturists, they say it's the lazy way of working, because really we just want to establish the systems and then walk back. That takes time. It takes a lot of work at the front end. But then 10, 20 years, the systems will continue to work because you put in the work at the beginning. And permaculture, just for me, it made so much sense because there are so many natural resources and there's so many little information that we can gather from nature that can help our daily life. And once we are conscious of that, we can put them into place, and then they will work with us. They will work with nature. They will work with our systems to help them grow better and for a longer time, and also regenerate our spaces that have been also so depleted with regular conventional agriculture, or just even the creation of cities and the migration of people into cities, and just finding this little things in nature, in the design of nature, that you can implement to generate more of that.
I want to open up. Does anyone have any questions? I mean, I have a few more, but I don't want to. I want more like back and forth at Charity or Juan or Juan. I mean, you had your own organic farm. I think it was in Guatemala, right? So, do you have any like anything any?
Yeah, no, I identify a lot with what Tamara was saying. My farm was also kind of permaculture inspired, and also a lot with what Ben was saying. We kind of worked backwards in that sense, that we were like, Guatemala is a country where there's tons of local food. It's grown, anything you eat is probably grown like, within a 30-minute drive from where you're located. Very little of it, if almost nothing, is organic. We actually are pretty, I think agrochemical companies have taken over most agriculture there. And even though we're a mostly agricultural country, it's obvious the detriment it's done on the soil and on people's health. But we kind of identified something that was local and that we wanted to supply, and then we worked backwards, in the sense that I was like, I also want to be able to like walk to distribute all my food. And we had these like cooling backpacks, and we would be able to like, you know, walk 10 or 15 minutes from our urban farm to be able to distribute. And I really liked, I actually didn't know about this lean Japanese farming kind of practices, but we did a lot of that, of how to, we don't need to expand, we just need to become more efficient, and how to almost like um, how to work less, and make more money, and how to bring customers out to the farm so we don't have to go out looking for them, and did a lot of community engagement. And you know, it was very successful at the time there, and continues. I was able to sell my share of the farm to one of my workers, and he continues to run it at a very successful rate. But I did have a question for Tamara, and I'm curious, what is the is permaculture like popular in Chile? Is that something that has that people have kind of learned and taken? Definitely in Guatemala over the last couple of years, it's grown amongst a small sector of the population, but I'm curious to know what's it like in Chile.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's very widespread. It's when I was learning about permaculture, I was looking to do my permaculture design course, which is a 72-hour course. And it's offered all over the world. It's the basics of permaculture. And I was looking where to do that. And I was looking to different countries to travel a little bit while I'm doing it. And then I found a place here in Chile that was offering it. And since I was moving back, I thought it was a great opportunity to just come and meet the people that were already doing this here. And it really is not a big community. The people that are doing permaculture here are that we are all trying to spread the word. But it's not very widespread. I think it's growing, probably similar to Guatemala. I think the more people become more conscious of their food and nature and climate change, they look for answers, and permaculture sometimes pops up. So I think it's positive that it's getting a little bit more track, but it's not widely known. If you ask anybody in Chile what permaculture is, probably 80% of the people won't know what it is.
So your background, that's your farm there, El Bord?
Yeah, this is
Beautiful weather. Right now, this webinar is like the brightest part of my whole week. It's been like nothing but gray clouds the whole week, not even one peak of sun. So seeing you have some sunshine, that makes me feel happy. But
Can
it's
I have a quick question?
Yeah.
Tamara, you mentioned that there's a very developed large scale agriculture already in Chile. So I would be very interested, because my experience in Africa has been the need to develop diverse supply sheds, right, to support and engage everyone. And there's benefits from engaging everyone and meeting the different needs. So I would be curious to see how you engage with the broader agricultural community, or not, and where you see either people welcoming you or isolating you, and in terms of that broader resilience of the agriculture in Chile.
Yeah. So Chile is very, like, agriculture is very important in Chile, and I don't think there's much. I mean, we have a connection. I'm in the middle of the Colchagua Valley, which is wine country. There's also a lot of trees, for fruit trees like apples and cherries, and most of that stuff goes out for export. So most of the stuff that's grown around me, people don't feed from that. And Chile is a long, thin country, and unfortunately, it's very centralized in Santiago, which is in the middle of the country. So, unfortunately, the food that's grown all over the country is all shipped to Santiago and redistributed to either exports or to the rest of the country. So it goes there and back, from the south, from the north, from wherever. So it's a very backward system, um, which I'm trying to change that in a small scale. But I am very fortunate that I'm also in a very small area in the Colchagua Valley where all of my neighbors are, or most of my neighbors are making wine, but they're making like organic boutique wine. So we have worked together in many different ways to develop like a tourist route and show what we are each doing, because we are all working in different ways and we're very close together, but we're all doing different things. So I think that that kind of like helps to bring people that come to the area that I'm at in the Central Valley for wine tours, and see maybe like a conventional big scale or wineries, and then they come here and they see these like very diverse different winemakers, and they get to see my farm and some other small little projects that are growing. And that's happening in some other areas too, but it's difficult because the country is not set up for helping us engage with the big agriculture. It actually makes it hard for us to, I can't get insurance for my crops because I grow like over 40 different species instead of like just one. So I can't insure, 18 square meters of tomatoes. But so it makes it hard to kind of compete because most of the subsidies are going to huge farms that are monocrops and that are like mostly for export, which is what the country really pushes for. Although, as like small businesses, there it has been a push in the last couple of years for sustainability and for more sustainable businesses. So that's a little bit of a balance, but in terms of us relating with the big ag, it's very hard, and it's hard to compete because the prices are just unreal. Like this, because of all the subsidies, my price for a vegetable, I try to get it to my community at the lowest price that I can possibly give, but it's still more expensive than what my neighbor is selling really, really cheap because he gets really a lot of subsidies. So it's hard to go to the market and compete next to regular resellers that actually go to Santiago and buy from the main distributor there to bring back here, because my costs are too high compared to them. And it's not that my costs are high, it's that the cost of like conventional vegetables is way too low. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't pay the worker. It doesn't pay the transport. It doesn't pay for the inputs. So in the end, it's like there's no real way that we can work together and compete in a neutral level.
I don't know, Hassana, if I might be able to chime
Yes,
in
please.
here. I think that's a really great question that Cherry posed. And I had the great opportunity to visit Tamara's farm and to be in Chile in March. And of the many differences between the US and Chile, there's one similarity in that there seemed to be this gigantic scale agriculture on the one hand, and then this micro scale permaculture community on the other, and the two never met. And I saw that definitely in Chile, and I see that here. But it's a great question because I think there's so much opportunity. There's so much opportunity there if there could be more intersection. Just to give you one example, we have tried to sell tomatoes to Kroger, the largest grocer in our small city. And when I went and talked to the produce buyer at Kroger, we're about 3 hours north of Indianapolis. They said, sure, we'd love to have your tomatoes here. If you could just deliver them down to Indianapolis, we'll barcode them, get them through our inner system, and then we'll have them sent back up here. And it made all the sense in the world, perhaps, to the Kroger employee, but made no sense to me as a local farmer who lives less than a mile away from Kroger. And I hear that a version of that story all the time, as Tamara alluded to, that it's just very difficult for those of us in the micro scale farming world to get access to big retail, to get access to the markets where we really could sell in volume that could support our farms.
Yeah, that happens. That happens a lot. And in Chile, it's especially like extreme because it's such a long country that the miles are so high, but everything goes to Santiago to be redistributed. So it's insane how difficult it is to get into that system.
And I imagine that going that far to a central location and coming back, like there might be a certain amount of food waste, or maybe the reasons why, like even where my example, I'm sure it's happening here, where when I go to the grocery store, I'll get something that doesn't taste, it may have been sitting in a distribution center for weeks, and now they're selling it still,
Yeah,
but it's not even really fresh food. you know.
Mhm.
exactly. It hasn't developed well. It doesn't have all the nutrients. It's harvested green and it's been pumped with oxygen just to keep the color and get it developed into what it looks like, a beautiful fruit, but has nothing in it.
And it's an incredible opportunity to reduce the greenhouse gases contributing to climate change from the agriculture sector, because many, if not much of that is just transportation, just stupid transportation. That with better forethought could be reduced.
Okay, one final question, Tamara, before so we already had some of that back and forth here already. But so as I heard that El Bor is about to begin its 8th season of production, what are your goals for the future of your farm, and are there any new projects or expansions you're excited to explore?
Yeah, we're going into our 8th season, and I am focusing this season into trying to be more local. Uh, we we deliver to Santiago, that's 3 hours away, and the Colchagua Valley and the beach, Pichilemu, that's an hour away. But unfortunately, most of our customers are in Santiago, which is 3 hours travel, and that wears on us. So we are trying to develop ways to make it more accessible for our community here so that people can come to the farm. We also we always make added value products with whatever we have too much of or that's going bad. So we make sauces with the tomatoes that we can't sell, and we make hot sauces and pickles and ferments and all that stuff. So we sell those at the market as well, but I would love to be able to build a commercial kitchen to be able to develop that in a bigger way. And also having a kitchen, I think, opens up even more to the community and to be able to make events and give classes and um, have it as a space for other people to be able to use it to show what can be done with food. That's not really, it's a plan that I really want to get done, but I am looking for funding for that. So it's slow, but I hope to get it running this year. And yeah, and just try to promote more that people as I think Ben was saying, to get to the farm, to come here, to see what we're doing, to get inspired, to try to find ways to do this in their own homes, to replicate it. There's nothing better than a tomato that you picked yourself and ate. So, so yeah, it's trying to be local and trying to give more to our community and be more part of our community.
Okay, thank you. All right, so thank you all for that. Before I bring on our final storyteller, which is Jeffrey Nyamata, Nyamata, sorry, from Kenya, I'm going to I want to play a little bit of a video. All right, before let's see, and like 2 minutes about the work that he's doing with IDE, and Jeffrey leads the group of farmers there in Kenya. So.
In this area, farmers mainly grow sorghum, they grow green gram, they grow cowpeas, they also grow maize. And all these crops, when it is time for harvesting, it is so laborious. Like if you have to thresh sorghum using hands, it will take you many days before you get a product. And the product is not of good quality to go to the market.
Kabla sija kutana na body food, nilikuwa na lot of challenges. Hali ilikuwa ngumu because that time ungeshinda hata siku moja ukose kupata 20 shillings.
This particular area, because of the fact that it's far from reach from other places, it makes it difficult for farmers to access post-harvest services, input services, and many other services. The people that really suffer when it's time for harvesting the crops and processing them, it's women. And so that is why Bountyfield, working with other partners like Cereal Growers Association, and of course with this support from Oxfam, we've been able to get to this area.
Hizi machine tulipoletewa na body food, ikawa kazi ni rahisi. Tuko na chandarua tunaweka, tunathroshia hapo, sinatoka safi kabisa. Alafu tukimaliza kuthresh, wanapack, hazina mawe, hazina uchafu, hazijafunjika, mwenyewe anaenda anauza. Unaona hapo imeongezea bei.
Kama hiyo ya manual, ningetoa kama tuseme gunia 7 ama 8. Lakini nikianza hii ya thresher, nilianzia namba 23 last season. Hata hii naona nitapata hiyo 20 something.
Sasa hivi maisha yangu yamekuwa rahisi sababu nalima shamba kubwa, navuna chakula kingi, navuna na urahisi, mapato yangu iko juu, watoto wanaenda shule, mambo yanaendelea vizuri kwa nyumba.
All right, thank you. All right, so before I bring him on, so our final storyteller is Jeffrey Namota, a market systems specialist with over 20 years of experience designing and implementing inclusive, sustainable business models. He has worked all over Africa and currently works for IDE Global as their team leader in Kenya, supporting small producers and businesses to innovate. So I want to welcome Jeffrey. And also, yeah, maybe we'll have a chance to explain why it says that transition from Bountyfield and Alexandra can, that was Alexandra's her company, her nonprofit organization, Bountyfield, that recently merged with IDE. So we can talk about that. But Jeffrey, maybe just to start off is, in your experience leading IDE Kenya, what are some of the innovative technologies or approaches that have had the most impact in supporting resilience of smallholder farmers?
First of all, thank you, Hassana, for this opportunity. And I would really like to say that the work that IDE is currently undertaking here in Kenya as a result of where we have come from a Bountyfield is really making a difference. Unlike many of my earlier presenters have spoken, in Kenya, the landscape is we have small parcels of land. Farmers in the villages have small parcels of land, maybe an acre or 2, at most 3. And for them, when the product is ready for processing, it becomes a very tedious activity. And it does not help them at all if there is no level of mechanization that would work. Like when the video was talking, one of the ladies spoke of if she was doing it manually processing, she would only have like 7 to 8 bags. But with mechanical threshing, she's talking of now having 23 bags. So in terms of how IDE works here in Kenya, we identify specific rural entrepreneurs who have like a landscape of say 300, 400, 500 smallholder farmers, equip them with post-harvest technology. It could be a shelling machine, it could be a threshing machine or a dryer. And the entrepreneurs now use that particular post-harvest technology to provide services to farmers in a very structured way, to the extent that these farmers actually pay for the service. And as they pay for the service, it becomes easy for the entrepreneur to expand his or her portfolio of tools so that it's actually possible for them to continuously get the service from her or the gentleman. So in terms of technology, I would say one of the technologies that the actual piece of technology. The other aspect is like how do you measure the crop to confirm that it's ready for threshing or for processing. So moisture meters for that matter make a difference because normally in the village they use, they don't do that. They do not check the moisture levels before they thresh, and that leads to a lot of losses. So in brief, this is what I would like to say, that access to technology that enables smallholder farmers process crops in the village is what we've been doing here, and we've seen a serious revolution in how farmers are now able to expand their production. They are able to improve the amount of production by unit area and the like. Over to you.
Hassana, if I may just add a quick note. I think, first of all, of course, I'm biased. I think the work that Jeffrey and his team are doing is amazing. And we've seen a lot of impact in a short period of time. But I just wanted to add another thing that I think is innovative about the work that's happening in Kenya is around this gap and these bottlenecks in supply chains vis-a-vis technology. And so for so many years, particularly in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa, where there may be a prototype of whatever it may be, a tiller or a thresher or what have you, it's something that Bounty Field dealt with as well, kind of brought into a village context and kind of dropped off there, and wonder why it doesn't actually kind of get utilized over a long period of time. It breaks down. Who's going to fix it? Is it high quality? Is it really what the community needs? Is it realistic to expect a subsistence farmer to pay for a thresher that's a few $100s if that's their annual income? So trying to address these questions, could we be a catalyst with rural entrepreneurs serving farmers and be a catalyst for more technology in the market that is small scale and that is meeting their needs? And I think, Jeffrey, it would be great if you could speak to that, and also why we're saving women's time for sure, but what about the opportunity around women's entrepreneurship?
So the first thing I would like to say in terms of what Alexandra has just alluded, in Africa, it is women who actually provide the services of processing crops. A crop like what you are seeing behind me, this is sorghum. Processing sorghum is one of the products that will make you itch. And as a result, many farmers do not want to produce it because they know if they have to produce, then it becomes a problem. And so in a nutshell, what I would like to say is having worked with both men and women in the communities, we've seen more and more women having better management skills for these kind of services to smallholder farmers in their villages. I think simply because it's women who are left in the village to tend the crops. When it's ready, they are the ones who process. And so using their networks when they have access to equipment like this, and when you build their capacity to be able to reach as many farmers as possible, it becomes easier for them to reach to their fellow women. And naturally, as a result of that, we have been able to see women becoming much more successful in running these businesses than men. This is not anecdotal. It is something that we've seen, collected data from across the country, and actually seen that a good number of women entrepreneurs have thrived more than men. Hassana, back to you.
Thank you. All right. So let's maybe talk about this. What are maybe some of the key challenges and successes you've encountered, like as far as scaling up sustainable agricultural practices in Kenya, and how do you ensure these solutions are accessible, and effective to small scale producers?
For sure. Remember, Alexandra just highlighted that the cost of the technology is not cheap, and also the fact that different places experience different climatic conditions. Like in Kenya, we have the Eastern Divide and the Western Divide. Western Divide is known in Kenya as the breadbasket for Kenya. The eastern part is more or less known as a dry area where normally they are used to receiving food aid. But with the work that we've been doing here, one thing that we have actually realized is in areas where it's more or less arid, farmers are better off with getting appropriate types of technology that will stimulate them producing drought-tolerant crops. And in this context, I mean products like this sorghum you are seeing here, green gram, pigeon peas, crops that could actually work in areas where there is minimum amount of rain and minimum amount of nutrition from the soils to actually work. And so making available appropriate technologies in those particular areas makes it possible for the farmers to become more resilient, to actually engage in the production of crops that are consistent with their climatic conditions, as opposed to wanting to produce, like in Kenya, farmers generally eat products from maize. But in the eastern part of Kenya, where it's usually very dry, they do not have an advantage of producing that. They'd better produce these other crops, sell, and then import the maize product from elsewhere where they have an advantage of producing that. So one thing that we've done as a program is being able to ensure that the entrepreneurs are actually able to provide services beyond post-harvest, to access to inputs, access to aggregation of clean products, so that farmers are more encouraged to continuously expand and improve the productivity of a particular commodity.
Thank you. You know what? I know I said it at the top of this, kind of get that long kind of introduction saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's like, no, we have maybe like 10 more minutes into this session. And I kind of like, I guess now I want to like just bring, everyone's already present here. So is any, maybe just one more question about like the future of resilient farming in Kenya, Jeffrey, like looking ahead, like what are the next steps for IDE Kenya in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship to further enhance resilience of the farming communities?
Thanks for that question. And I'm very glad that I did join this particular webinar, because some of my earlier speakers have spoken to technologies like permaculture, the systems like permaculture that have worked elsewhere that would actually work here. In Kenya, and especially in areas where they are drought tolerant, where it's very arid, one aspect that we have seen is the integration of regenerative agriculture has really made a difference. And it's one aspect that we would like to encourage farmers to continuously do moving forward, like the use of what we refer to as side pits, the use of mulching, the use of water harvesting so that the water can be utilized during the dry spells to irrigate crops. And of course, also the use of what I would call vertical gardens, so that farmers are actually able to produce their own nutritious crops like vegetables and fruits, so that in moments when they have absolute no crop, they can actually have something for them to either sell, consume locally, and of course, surplus they sell. And of course, moving forward, we have also seen a possibility of going beyond processing to value addition, so that farmers are actually encouraged to produce the products, because if the value that you're going to get of a product is much higher, then you'd be encouraged to expand the area under production, and of course also increase the amount of production that you get from the particular farm. So I really want to say that also working with the markets, like markets for specific commodities, and the farmers are now sure that if I produce a product like, say, sorghum or green gram, I know there is a buyer who would give me a better price And because of the better price, it means my costs of production would actually have been reduced, because instead of earning a price of like $0.50 per kilo, I'm going to earn a price of $1.50 per kilo. That means I need to even farm less to get more money. And realistically, I would like to say that with the kind of interventions that we've been able to establish, and also being able to understand that rural smallholder farmers can actually integrate whatever it is that they have been doing with new technology that is coming on board. When you add to that, it really resonates with them, and that they are actually able to carry on with the activities, so that we are able to feed not just Kenya, but also the neighboring countries. Thank you.
Thank you all. So, you know what? We have like 10 minutes left. I was just looking to see in the chat. I think, Juan, you had already been kind of answering some of the questions, but with this last like 8 minutes, just want to open it up, you know, with our main panelists, everyone like is, you know, like, what are your thoughts? Or if anyone has any comments on what anyone else said, or what are some of your last thoughts? Like, what do you want to leave our viewers with on this topic?
Can I just comment on something that Alexandra and Jeffrey were talking about IDE? So I think one of the unique things is that farmers don't have to do it all. So again, to go back to this idea of diverse ecosystems. So in the past or historically, there has been technology dumped, or, you know, cooperatives maybe artificially created to serve a farmer's need, and then they don't go anywhere. And so in their case, they're saying, the technology is the solution, but what's the best way to deploy it for the farmer's utilization? It's not that every farmer needs to have their own thresher. It's developing an entrepreneurial model that can serve the farmers in that case. And I think that Ben and I saw opportunities like this in Nigeria, where we said, okay, so what do the farmers do well, and let's help them do that better. And then where is a supportive ecosystem that supports them, and maybe other types of farmers as well, the larger farmers that will also benefit, and to support those entrepreneurships and around to create that supportive frame and ecosystem of entrepreneurship. So I think we've heard a lot about farmers being entrepreneurs themselves, but I think that the IDE model gave a really interesting example of how there's complementary and supporting entrepreneurship opportunities that can help get the innovation that farmers need, and solve the farmers' problems, and that still remains farmers first. It's not sort of an external push. So I guess that's what I, you know, sort of was taking away, that this diverse ecosystem that's farmer first, but also has other actors and other players that support them.
Any other final thoughts from you, Alexandra, Juan? Or something that maybe we didn't cover, or you want to like get out there?
You know, I just, you know, kind of always do the pitch for soil. And this is like very farmy and not, but I do think it's like the soils are kind of the solution for everything. And the more we begin to understand, you know, what soils are and how microorganisms are responsible breaking down organic matter and making nutrients available for plants, how we understand that it's also capable of capturing carbon, of helping absorb water and reduce flooding and grow healthy food. I think it's like everyone here, wherever we can, we just need to push that we need to focus more on restoring our soils, and as like a national policy in every country, I think that should be, and there's many ways of going about it, but it's just been my experience as you know, farming and now teaching and gardening, of just like the importance of soil, and actually how little understanding people have of how much we depend on the health of our soils.
So, and I will just add just a couple quick thoughts. One is that one of the things Jeffrey didn't mention, but I'm sure is also part of everyone's strategy, is just thinking about you know, younger folk, men and women who are looking for employment opportunities. And of course, the projections around the youth really being the majority of the population under 25, by 2050 or what have you. So like there's a real need for skills building, employment, and so many youth do not see themselves on the farm, especially if they have to beat their crops with sticks, for example, for hours of the day. It's kind of a losing proposition. So like, what are the strategies to also support them along the way? And both, young women and young men who may also have different, perspectives on things. What always strikes me in these kinds of dialogues is just how many similarities there are actually between small farmers in developed countries and small farmers in developing countries, where even though farming systems are completely different and solutions need to be contextualized, but farmers want to grow food um, and um, and live off the land. And rural communities really do need support, domestic support programs, subsidies, and jobs creation, in order to be able to thrive. And so those divides are not that wide in many ways, and some of the levers are also very similar in terms of what kinds of systems can we put in place to make sure that we're actually promoting healthy, nutritious food production and clean energy and justice and equity along the way. So I mean, not to I know that's a big statement, but I've certainly heard it from all of the different speakers from around the world, and I find that quite inspiring, even though we know there's a lot of work to do.
Thank you. From our food producers, storytellers, Tamara, Ben, Jeffrey, any final thoughts in the last
Well,
4 minutes, 3 minutes?
well, well, my final thought is this way. Thanks, Alexandra, for adding to the youth perspective. There's also a perspective about digital, the use of platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp that we've successfully utilized here in Kenya. And we've seen the rural entrepreneurs moving from 300 farmers to 2,000 farmers within the shortest time possible. And of course, expanding the business offerings, from inputs to post-harvest to services, other services that the entrepreneurs are actually able to offer. And then, of course, finally, I would like to encourage that partnerships between governments, the private sector, and the other organizations that are there for common good are being emphasized so that we have better results. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Tamara?
Yeah, I agree with Juan Pablo about soils. Whenever people ask me what I grow, I think the first thing I grow is soil, because we are living in eroded systems, and if we don't have good soils and a good ecosystem that supports that soil, then we won't grow good food. So I liked that comment and I agree with it. I also wanted to quickly just respond to one of the questions in the chat that I just saw about permaculture farming versus regular farming. And I wanted to clarify that permaculture is a design system and you can farm within that system. But and by doing that, you maybe will maximize space and intercrop and use maybe like solar systems to power your irrigation. And but it's basically permaculture is a design system, and you can farm within it and you can farm without it. And that's why for us, we are a permaculture project, and within it, we grow vegetables in a small part of it. And we don't necessarily, I think there's permaculture everywhere, but we don't necessarily call it a permaculture farm because we use many different systems. We've based ourselves a lot in different people, different mentors, including Ben, who's been a huge inspiration for me and for us here at El Borde. And I think that the best we can do is just show people what we can do in starting small and then going wherever excuse me, wherever you need to go. But encouraging people to grow food, grow something in their windowsill, grow a little bed of vegetables in their garden, but have the experience of growing food for yourself and your community, and that will inspire more people to do the same.
Thank you, Tamara. Okay, Ben, I'll give you 30 seconds and then we have to just like thank everyone and then get out of here.
Okay, thanks. Hassana, you began by listing problems within agriculture, and then asking the question, how do we fix this? And after, at the conclusion of this, hearing everyone, I would add, who do we get to fix this, not just how? And I like the idea that we have a decentralized solutions because the problems are varied and mixed. And so who do we get to fix this? I like the idea of listening to farmers in places like Chile and Kenya, and other contexts, and younger people and women-owned farmers, and actually applying some of those ideas to our context here in North America. And so I'd say the who is just as interesting to me as the how.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
with that, I want to thank all our guests. Thank the Carter School again for allowing us to have this wonderful conversation. Best of luck, best wishes for you all and your farms. And thank you, Charity and Alexandra and Juan. I have to actually make it out there to Arcadia and buy some buy some organic. That was my complaint. Is I wish I could afford more organic food, but you know, like think there's this wonderful solution there. So with that, thank
Hassana,
you.
come out and I will give you a tour and send you home with some stuff.
All right. Thanks so much. All right. Thank you to the staff there at Carter School, Mercedes and Amber on the back end, and you all be safe and be well and prosper and grow. As I say, thank you all.